We are going to listen Attila İlhan's poetry book, Ben Sana Mecburum. I will give more information about him after. But now we are just listen this podcast, I think. We just listen from his own voice. He had been wrote his book of his same name in the 1960s. He actually voices this work later. Love isn't not only theme of this poetry. In his poems collected in 5 chapters in this book, you will find political atmosphere of this period, turbulence, tension, resistance, rebellion, impossible love, and longing for freedom. Track 1, Ben Sana Mecburum. This sound like Turkish...
Ben sana mecburum, bilemezsin. Ağaçlar sonbahara hazırlanır. Örnek, kimi zaman rezilce korkulur. İnsan, ben sana mecburum, bilemezsin.
I keep your name in my mind like a myth, like a nail. I warm my heart with you. I'm obligated to you, you're gone. From living a captive razor mouth. Sometimes this passion break this hands, takes a few lives for out of this living. Oh, no one knows you, little kid. Maybe you're blind, maybe you're broken. You're in a hurry. The bad wind is taking your hair. Whenever I think of living, maybe it's hard of this stable of wolves without shame, but without getting our hands dirty. Whenever I think of living, I say shut up and start with your name. Okay, people with ideal thoughts always live in suspense. Life isn't easy for them. The poet who went to France with this problem reflects his moods. The first poem of this section, Istanbul Pain, it can be poetry book's summary, was also reflected in his mood. Istanbul here is the land of country loved to death. And we will also hear his Istanbul metaphor in all parts, we can say. But it's the source of all that has happened to it. In this episode, he drinks water in Emirgan on the hand and looks for a job in French to Africa on the other hand, and shot in Algeria. It can be different parts. The poet wander in the street of Istanbul with his dream of his lover in his mind and love in his heart. At the same time, there is a strong sense of loneliness in this part. Whenever I think of living, maybe it's hard to stable of wolves without shame, but without getting our hands dirty. This lyrics likens life to the table of wolves. It draws attention to social problems such as financial difficulties, unemployment, and violence. He's trying to say that sometimes people can be too cruel up to their interest and ego. Track 2, Şahane Serseri.
Yedi dağın yolları kalbimden geçer. Yolumdan çekil yavrum, bağlasalar duramam. Demir asa demir çarık dedim.
Ay.
Yolculuk dedim. Şu koca dünya dedim. Ağlasam dedim. Yola bir düşüldü mü ömür boyunca gidilir. Ekmeklerin peşinden. Büyük şehirler, büyük aşklar çığlık çığlığa terk edilir. Gurbet dedim, vatan dedim, hürriyet dedim.
Okay. Interesting. Awesome tramp. I was born as passenger. From my mother, the roads of the 7 mountains passed through my heart. 7 mountains. It can be Shehname. I met the seas of the rivers. Once you hit the road, you go for life after bread and wine. Big cities, big loves, screaming. With screaming is abandoned. What should I do? I said, expiate. I said homeland, I said freedom.
İmdat durmuştu, kan ter içindeydim. Akdeniz
Track 3, Başka Yerde, Olmak.
elindeydim. 12.05'te İzmir'deydim Allah'ım. Şiir deniz gibi kımıldıyordu.
I feels like tension
İşte İstanbul
in violin.
dağılmıştı. Hilal gibi bir kızcağız Beşiktaş'ta rüyasını dokuyordu. Onun barında ben burnumu şaraba sokmuştum. Katiyen sarhoştum, kirpiklerim yanıyor. Anlık bir iştahsız orospu bulmuştum. Bilmem neden. Ben çıldırmıştım. Artık öteki ömrümü yaşayacaktım.
Being elsewhere, say in Istanbul and crippled foggy. I was drinking seashore coffee. Istanbul was a pale green tram. I was scattered in Istanbul at 12:15. A girl like a crescent in Beşiktaş. She was waving her dream. I was tired of her. The sea was shying. I would die in Paris from afar. I was listening to Notre Dame's screams. I knew my heart was boiling. I couldn't sleep. The defeat in me was growing in everyone. There was a rush. Everyone was hungry. I was in Paris at Gare d'Ouest. I was in poor hotel. I left you out of my greed. I gave myself to drink your letters. I burned and tore all your letters. Paris was crazy. I was crazy. I was going to live my other life now, being elsewhere. Where his poets like being in love and road trip. Track 4, İstanbul Ağrısı. Oh.
Sarmaşıkları büyüteceğim. Pancak pancak şiirler tüküreceğim. Demeklerini bulut bulut dudaklarıma uzatan, sirkeci garında tren çığlıklarıyla bıçaklanıp, intihar dumanları içindeki Haydarpaşa'dan Anadolu üstlerine bakıp, yakaları karanfilli ibneler eğer beni aldatmıyorsa, kulaklarım şu bildiğin Attila İlhan'ı zehirleyebilirim. Sonbahar karanlıkları tut. Ya senin ağrın, ağır kabaralarınla çaresiz zehirler kusan çılgın bir yılan gibi bendeyim. Ölsem, yalnız kalsam, sultanım kaybol. Taptık ulan, unuttun mu? Sana taptık.
Interesting language in here. Rhymes one by one with their necks bent in front of the door. Tel Aviv songs that light up Jewish streets. Collapse on blue asphalt, kneeling. If you're still Istanbul, stretching your dirty lips to my clogged lips. Strangled by train screams at Sirkeci station. From Haydarpaşa in smoke of suicide, looking at the Anatolian tops sweeping. If you're still Istanbul, if I'm not deceived, facts with carnation colors. If they ain't cheating on me until blood is gushing out of my ears, I'm at your disposal again. If I'm not ashamed, dripping my eyes into my glass drop by drop. Myself, that is Attila İlhan, you know. I can poison him. Poisoning himself like a crazy snake that vomits helpless poison that you have crushed my sleep with your heavy swells. The auger you're poured into me, it's your pain. If it's your pain, I feel all over me like a cradle. With needles, you won again, Istanbul. You won, I lost. If I die, if I am alone. My wallet is lost. This city was Trump. We can divide the poetic development of Attila İlhan into the two periods. The first period is the period of social realism, which he describes as cold socialism in his own word. The other is social realism, which he started advocate after going to Paris in the early 50s, except for his book, The Wall. He wrote all his poems within the framework of the social realism movement. In Attila İlhan, this theory was shaped by blending Kemalist thought with socialist struggles. There is a tense atmosphere in Attila İlhan's poetry and characters he creates are depressed. It focuses on psychology of the individual in general and the revolutionary individual in particular. Social realists differ from the militant and idealized individual in poetry. The revolutionary characters in Attila İlhan's poetry have fears, but they aren't cowardly. If frequently focused on the psychology of the revolutionary individual, especially in his book, The Prisoner's Diary, Tutuklunun Günlüğü, in which he describes the period of March 12 and the Kingdom of Fear, in which he describes the period September 12 situation. This an important day in Turkish political history, the September 12 COP or 1980 revolution, officially named the 12 September operation or the flag operation, the military coup carried out by the Turkish armed forces on 12 September within the chain of command. It's the third and last open invitation of the armed force against government in the history of Republic of Turkey. Yes, the most important cities mentioned in Attila İlhan's poetry are Izmir, Istanbul, and Paris. When we compare these three cities, I believe that Attila İlhan wrote the most beautiful poem to Istanbul. In poetical capital is Istanbul and its intellectual capital is Izmir. His poem is some of the intellectual and poetic capitals, and top of that, lost of Paris. Istanbul is important. Our country, Turkey. Track 5, Emperyal Oteli.
Kalbim kendiliğinden vuracaktı.
Oh.
Ben hiç böylesini görmemiştim. Sen kollarımın arasındasın. Onlar gibi değilsin, sen başkasın. Eksizin Maria Dolores ağlayacaktı. İstanbul'u yağmur tutacaktı. Karanlık bir türlü bitmiyordu. Sirkeci garında sabahladık. Ben hiç böylesini görmemiştim. Vurdun, kanıma girdin. Kabulümsün.
This poem very metaphoric. Very. Is this real? This is real. In Ankara. Okay. You hit me. You got into my blood. I have an objection. I would be silent for 4 days and 4 nights. The rain would go out. The clock on the wall would stop. At the Imperial Hotel this autumn, suicidal pessimistic leaves. It nothing like your eyes enters the man's dream. Newspapers were writing about the murder. A handful of blood was spilled on Golden Horn. Golden Horn? Haliç. We stayed 3 nights in Imperial Hotel. We couldn't afford more. The darkness was never ending. No one was looking at us. Interesting. What is this? What is this hotel? It tells about the impossible love of 2 unemployed and poor young people, but I can't explain why it attracts so much attention. I think its atmosphere, which remind me French films between 2 wars, was effective in this. The house and the apartment was universe, while the hotel is impermanent. Where is this house? Just comparing house and hotels, because hotel is symbolic in here. In fact, the anonymity in the hotel room is in the cells, which is blazing. It will not belong to anyone. This sense of belongingness is one of the most important photographs of loneliness in the hotel room. Maybe it's another expression of helplessness and misery. Sometimes it's a dress where people make consciousness reckoning and analyze while going toward guest and orientation. While making this reckoning, he tries to internalize the objects in their own place many times that they are miles away from. Sometimes they want to touch, and sometimes they don't want to dare to look. Affect people, a longing to be at home, to belong. In this poem, he wants a problematic, not only spiritual from love, but also financially. The Black Fairy saying that he will have to leave in hotel the third night to looking for a job. That he had to wake up the Sirkeci station in the morning. That was darkness within him hasn't ended. That all that noise and crowd of the city and all the difference and all indifference of the peoples, although he empathized of feeling of being alone. Greek violentists and Tepebaşı Joes in the Asmalı Mescid showed the diversity, beautiful and colors of the people in Istanbul. Is the point of the events from September 6, which are perhaps the most painful and worst days of the country, when he says a handful of blood was spilled on the Golden Horn. Maybe that day all the beautiful colors of Istanbul were buried in the ground. This line is important as it shows that the imperial mentality has crossed the borders that will threaten our humanity. I couldn't explain like this. Track 6, Sisler Bulvarı.
Çökmüştü, omuzlarımıza çoktan çökmüştü. Kesik birer kol gibi yalnızdım. Dağlarda terk edilmiş bir çocuk gibiydim. Dokunsanız ağlayacaktım. Yeni kapıda bir tren vardı. Evime gitmekten korkuyordum. Sisler boğazıma sarılmışlar. İsmi bilmiyorum ne olacak. Casablanca'da bir gün kalacağım. Sisler Bulvarı'nı hatırlayacağım. Kırmızı seni hatırlatanın çenesini kıracağım. Limanda vapurlar uğurlayacak. Sisler Bulvarı ayaklanıyor. Artık kalbimi susturamıyorum.
It reminds me Silent Hill atmosphere. The sun stood behind your hand. The tree was dying on the boulevard. We were kissing on every corner. We were alone, like severed arms. The fires weren't burning in the mountains. I'm lost you in the boulevard of fog. I was like an abandoned child. I would cry if you touched. Their gun hit me in my left groin. They will knock on your door in the morning. They will take your hand. You will turn to stone when you see me. You will not cry. Cried all autumn, all leaves. It was like Istanbul crying. If you say to me, die, maybe I would die. Boulevard of fog is rising. I can't silence my heart anymore. Attila İlhan included this poem, which gave it name to the book, among the poems he collected under the title of Captain in his works published under the title Sisler Bulvarı in 1954. In fact, when we look at this section, it's seen that Attila İlhan's ideology and social realist worldview aren't reflected in this poem. It's observed that the feeling of tension, escape from geography and love come to the fore in these poems, in which the feeling of me is dominant. However, although we were expressed it as poems in which the feeling of me, the me we encounter here isn't self that has completely got rid of the realities of society. As of the period when the poem was written, the sociological and political conditions of the poet, and the isolated effect of big cities on people actually appear in the anxieties and tension of the individual, the I, me, in poetry. In the spirit poem between Sisler Bulvarı and Forbidden Love, loves, rebellion, socialist struggle, and big city life are mentioned. Tensions arising from the dark world of big city life are handled. In the poem in which the self is the forefront, the social realist thought is implied behind the experience of people in clump of images, behind me, desire to live free, the existence of political pressures, and the unsettled atmosphere of freedom is brought to attention. In one of his interviews, Attila İlhan states that in his work called Sisler Bulvarı, the theme of evasion, that is, escape oneself, is predominant. He even goes one step further and argues that the theme of running away from oneself started in Turkish poetry with the work called Sisler Bulvarı. According to the characteristic of this poem, we will need to approach the poem with biographical reading and psychoanalytic perspective, because this poet, who was exposed to serious persecution due to his political stance, constantly feared to the cause as a result of the lawsuit filed against him, and felt the agony of conviction with all its cruelty. The themes of tension and escape from geography, which also form the content layers of this poem, overshadow the theme of love and is taken a shape that defines the boundaries of love. The main element of this poem, folk, represent tension, uncertainty, danger, escape, and loneliness, even the death scene drawn like painting, which also constitutes the contents layer of the poem. Attila İlhan says the following about Sisler Bulvarı, Boulevard of Fog, in his article titled Notes for the Enthusiast. As I wrote before, because of some poems I have to you. Ben Sana Mecburum, the life of secret commissariat required me to live an edge of knife for a long time. I tried to express the impression of the life indirectly in such suspense poems. This poem, this poem very deep and very important for his art, I think. I agree. Track 7, Pia. French girl name, I think.
Kör gibi çıkıp giderdim. Ben bir şehre geldim. Üstelik parasızım, pasaportsuzum. Ne olsam eksiksiz ölürdüm.
What if I knew who Pia is? If I hold your hands together, I die. If she doesn't go to another city, if I don't find the hotels empty, like a glass of ice drink, if I don't stream and stream, what happens at the door in the morning? If I could hold Pia's hands, if I died, I would die completely. One day, while Attila İlhan was sitting on the Kadıköy pier, he saw that a transport vehicle with foreign license plate was coming there. The thing that drew attention with the vehicle is on it, it says Pakistan International Airlines, PIA. Attila İlhan likens the transport vehicle there to the woman of his dreams. They asked to him, "Who is Pia? Is this real?" His answer would be as follows: what remains in mind in moment of impossible loves? There is no love left, and You ended with each other. Their suspended loves, they're remembered. But pure love, it never ends because there is no experience like platonic love. Okay. Track 8, Üçüncü Şahsın Şiiri.
Gözlerim gözlerime deyince felaketimden korkardım. Felaketim oldu. Ağlardım. Ne vakit mabel kan içinde yatardı. Limandan bir gemi giderdi.
Who is Jezebel?
Kalkıp ona
I would have been a disaster. I would have cried. Would end like a novel. Jezebel lay in blood. What is this? Jezebel is the daughter of Cebbar, one of Sidon, and the wife of King Ahab of Israel, mentioned in the book of the King in the Tanakh. Okay, a ship would leave the port. You would get up and go to him. I think he was one of the good ones. Did he laugh? It was like a funeral. Who's third person? Between him and her, a boy like a trash. I was afraid that I would kill. I would have been disaster. I would have cried. Maybe just jealousy in here. Track 9, Döşeme.
işte
Traditional sound in Turkey.
kınalanır elvan elvan yeryüzü. Öğrenciyin yamacılar yanaklı kaman kızları. Eli gözü
Okay.
hayran oldu cemalin. Hayaller her seher baktı. O afaka ser çekmiş dağları.
Parliament is established on the slope of Örenci. Rows of coffee pots are put into the embers. The instructed Sin Ola Sarı Öküz. Just name, not important. The edict of the palace doesn't make a profit. Folk songs are made for the sake of mountains and stones. All forests are red as if they were on fire. The Lofi looks terribly. Something will happen to the Gavur Dağları. What is this? Dreams every morning. The Afaka sweats. That trouble swept the mountains. They cried a lot, laughed a lot, suffered a lot. What is this? Gavur Dağları. During the caliphate of Hazreti Ömer, an army under command of Hazreti Ukkaşe, saint maybe, Ukkaşe was assigned to conquer the province of Kils Antep, Maraş and Malatya. So the Nurda region came under the rule of Muslims, previously known as Gavur Mountain. A little bit assault of strangers, Gavur. Dirty strangers mountain. Turned Nur. Bless. I think you didn't understand, but it's okay. Not important. Track 10, Cebbaroğlu Muhammed.
Donanır dallar, donanır yeşilinden alından, istasyon deresi başımızdan duman eksilmesin Gavur dağları. Siz hikaye durdu görüyor geleni, yel midir toz mudur anlamıyor çıldı. İlk seferde 15 kişi vurdular ve bir hayli düşman kırdılar. Aynı akşam doğurmuş karısı döne, mavi gözlü bir çocuksa.
Interesting story. When springs come around Kaman mountain, tend of fools from the ruined plain, an ominous weather descended on my hometown. Ominous and dark, the children are no longer laughing, silent crying mothers, shut on the way on the woods. Raped one by one. Old man begged God, climbed into the mountains. Jebbar's son Muhammed drew a gun on the French. For the sake of free living, for the sake of honor, for this blessed land, to the villages to Urfa and Antep, to the bloody-eyed Maraş gentle. Again, this area, Aymanos Mountain, locally called Gavur Mountain in Osmaniye. His father was the district governor of this area at the time. There is an experience in poem with all the facts are hidden. This poem both characteristic. He writes in his books that the Osmani, Aman Osman. This poem with its verse was described in Adana during the years of the national struggle, the liberation war of the people of Adana against the French. This poem is epic boys whose poems smell like wheat, among which I naturally found myself and was proud of while reading. Cebbar, Oğlu, Muhammed, one of the heroes of Adana, goes to the mountain to support the newly formed national force in order to fight against the French who occupied the city. The wife he left behind, his children, maybe his old mother and father, they can't get any news from their loved ones. Days of conflict increases longing for his family. Who knows, maybe the longing for the glory days in our nation. After all, longing is on wing of the bird. It's in the prayers. Okay, we can understand. Track 11, Cazgır.
Vur davul, baş pehlivan havası.
Okay.
Çıksın Bekir Osman. Destan vur davul, dağların taşları titrer. Dile gelsin vur davul, gök yerinden kaymalı. Hodri meydan, vakit tamam, peşrev tamamdır. Ha deyince kaldırır.
Who is Bekir Osman? The third of the fourth great chaplain of the compassion of Islamic prophet Muhammed, who was the given good news of paradise. I think they are wrestlers' name, but I don't know. Maybe behavior wrestler. Bless your life. Behave crazy, firecracker, mistral storm. Avalanche is a master of overthrowing. Let the memory of Yusuf and Alicho be mentioned. Who are they? Let's go out and order the square like a volcano. Okay. I can search for these symbols in here. Maybe they're important. Track 12, Öküz.
Yaşamaklı nasıl iplik, boynuzları mıhladı. Yaşamaklı bu gidinin imansızı, yabanın domuzu ho. Ha öküz, koca öküz, ruşena.
Ox. The old ox of the living Moses, ho. Godless wild boar, ho. The mustard ox of Musa. Dubbed Lamentif. What is this? In his brow, inspiration of might in his eye. What is this ox symbol in here? According to Old Testament, the golden calf is an idol made an Aaron, Israelite, who rebelled when Moses ascended Mount Sinai. The calf was the embodiment of the Egypt god, so a double mistake was made because both the idol was worshipped and God was visualized. I will explain later more detail. Track 13, Barakmuslu Mezarlığı. This audiobook very traditional.
Kuşuçmaz, kervan geçmez. Barakmuslu Mezarlığı kımıldanır için. Barakmuslu Mezarlığında seyran ölüler. Ben selamsız oğlu Bekir, iki gözüm iki ateş parçası. Fadimem, sıtmalar girdi kanına. Fadimem, Barakmuslu Mezarlığı. Benim dedem Yadeller'de öldüler. Bir babam Duran Çavuş'tan kavak ağacından dilerim. Telli kavak.
Okay. Interesting. Why is your heart like a windmill stopped? Coyotes descended on the water. Willow branches descended on the water. Barakmuslu cemetery stirs. The dead watching him in the cemetery. I know myself as a land. The land knows me as a father. Why am I in this grave? I have no father, only my mother. I don't have a grandfather. My poor grandmother lies in here. 8 throats in ruined house look in my wallet. Malaria has entered in your blood, my Fadime. Barakmuslu Cemetery became the place for your sentence. Both my father and grandfather were sacrificed during the years. I don't have a grave. I'm one of the martyrs of Dardanos. My 23 sprints turned into ashes on the curly March day. They buried my head separately. They buried my body separately. We came as either Ghazi or martyr. We became martyrs. I saw with my 2 eyes that the balls spit death, repentance, that the heavens count like conceptive. Where did you come from like a dervish, and where did you go like this? My grandfather, my father died in the valleys. You poisoned my heart. How is your knife? Both my hands in red blood. 8 sores stare at my palm. Will shakes Balkans cry? I cry. I beg of my father. Duran surgeon of the poplar tree. Poplar tree has a symbolic means. I know it. Everyone knows that this holy tree. What is this story of Barakmuslu Cemetery? For Attila İlhan, who spent his childhood in a large and developed city like Izmir, the Ilgan years provide the opportunity to get to know the Anatolian people closely. Grandmother Miyase, who came to visit their house of the first night they settled down during the stay in here. The poem's poem, called Barakmuslu Cemetery, is deserted village. Cemetery located in the village of Ilgan. The poem was written to reveal the troubles of the Anatolian people. This cemetery, which expressed the desire of the Anatolian people to see their dead in this land after the wars, has an impressive saying. Track 14, Türkiye.
Gel Yılmaz Mahmud'um, gel Bilaloğlu, arabamın atları, evim barkım, köyüm obam Türkiye. O senin çimli yıldızlı Türkiye. Sen Mehmet'sin, omuzların Anadolu yaylası. Şehit babası, sana selam olsun dünyadan, hürriyetten.
Okay, our country, my country, our country. Turkey, laugh a lot, cry a lot. Hometown of patient, heartbroken people. Everyone. If I kissed your purple eyes, your honest eyes, Asiyem, İşveli Hatice Fistanı. This symbols in here, some folk song of cities, province, very complicated, but I can search a lot, I think. I have to say, the entering lyrics, Türkiye smoke took off the mountains of Turkey. The entering of this poet, dağ başını duman almış. This is another march, İzmir March. The entering of İzmir March. I noticed, of course. Whatever. And it's the minarets drawn to the sky like a sword. The Sultan of cities, my dear Istanbul. You are Mehmet. Mehmet, name of martyr people, the Anatolian plateau of your shoulders. Mountains, your giant body. You're the son of the martyr, the father of the martyr. A lot of word of praise. The last of this audiobook. Track 15, Mustafa Kemal.
Dağ başına efkar almış, gümüşlere durmaz ağlar. Gözyaşından ağlar ağlar, cihan ağlar. mızıkalar iniler, ırlam ırlam dönülür. Uçan kuşlar, Kemal'im der, der gibi çağrışır. Kahrolur sütü sıcaklık, ellerinden öperim Mustafa Kemal. Sen uyudun, asılanlar dirildi, Mustafa'm, Mustafa Kemal'im. Yüreğim kırıldı, kanım kurudu. Var git Karadeniz, var git başım.
Okay, he is founder of Turkey. I love background, by the way. Okay, the mountain has taken its head, silver stream never stopped crying. My eyes are bloodshot from tears. Time come and pass. Every passing takes you away from us piece by piece. Mustafa Kemal'im. This is a quiet questioning. You know, they cut Kubilai once because you ordered they hang the slaughterers. You slept, the hanged were resurrected. Tonight is the night of doomsday, this very. May there be light where he slept, Mustafa Kemal says. I'm not afraid of that. Their tongues who said not to be afraid became dust. Interesting. This is a very long speech. You had a revolutionary leader. They said to Attila İlhan, you had a revolutionary leader. You had a revolutionary leader. His name is Kemal. What was it? What is this ideology? He saw this knowledge about Mustafa Kemal consists of very consular information, such as the landing and Samsun on May 1999. May 19, 1919. May 19, 1919. And saving the country from the enemy occupation and began to examine his thoughts and actions. There has been an act of change of his mind in Turkish political thought in certain periods. For example, has been an act of change of mind in Turkish political thought. For example, the mid-1960s, it was seen that the Kemalists in political ideology started to become socialist. Kemalists, some of whom became socialist at the end of the 70s, and some of them from the very beginning of the 80s experience a process where they interpret Kemalism critically and even came the anti-Kemalist line. Later, since the beginning of the 90s, the Kemalists understanding has tended to revive in the same people. However, Attila İlhan continued to develop the Kemalist attitude for the rest of his life since the early 50s. The issues come to for Attila İlhan's comments and evolution of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. The first of these is that Atatürk's period laid the necessary, indispensable foundation for the establishment of democratic political and social order. The second is that fully independent understanding color of Kemalism. The third is Kemalism idealization of the Turkish nation that is created new nation of values of scientific methods of Western civilization instead of nation imitating Westerners. These three aspects are considered in Attila İlhan's text as a distinguished feature of the Mustafa Kemal Atatürk era, or to put in another way, the trademark İlhan has poisoned the Atatürk's era in the different place in the last 200 years of Turkey history. On the basis of the three issues he underlined, according to İlhan, the establishment process, the Turkish nation state, its democratic socialism, anti-imperialist attitude at the search for the contemporary Turkish identity that carries the characteristic of his own past. He was isolated from the both union and process movement in the single-party administration led by İsmet İnönü and the successor, the Democrat Party. This is, again, Turkey's political issues, in fact. Because of these determination, Attila İlhan represented the figure of the opposition Turkish intellectual who became into conflict with the dominant discourse of his time. This is the reason why only his poetic side brought the fore. In this context, İlhan, above all, subjected the Marxist liberal left intellectuals who define Atatürk's era as a process that reproduced the despotism of the union and process, and tend to compromise with imperialism to the radical criticism. In addition, he heavily criticized the left Kemalist circles who are similar to his own determination to seek the ways of Kemalist power with the cop based on petty bourgeoism radicalism. Oh, hey. Yes, he is not just poetry writer, politics side of his art. We are going to look at his poems from this perspective, especially for Attila İlhan.